Well, why not?
Yeah, why not?
So adding it to the discography, this particular album is centered around his later works.
His later works, that's correct.
Okay, so we started the hour with the Pianist Fantasie.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what work did you start with to start shaping this program?
Well, it would be the Fourth Ballade.
Okay.
The Fourth Ballade of Chopin, I figure, is probably his greatest work. Could be, anyway. And it's the last of the ballades, of course. And so the Polonaise Fantasy is his last great work. And the Fourth Scherzo, which is also on this CD, and what is the piece that I'm playing tomorrow, and is a piece that I particularly love, because it's actually not terribly Chopinesque. Of course, you recognize it as Chopin, particularly in the lovely lyrical middle section. But in fact, it's the only scherzo which lives up to its name, scherzo, which means joke. It's no joke. I'm telling you, it's no joke at all to play. But it's a lighthearted Chopin, and you just don't hear lighthearted Chopin.
No. Well, tell us a little bit about your relationship with Chopin. I mean, because he was the composer that really ushered you into your international career in a lot of ways. So how did that begin? What was it about Chopin that drew you into his language?
Very easy to answer that, actually. On the one side, as a musician, I think even people who aren't Chopin fanatics, as I am, we will all recognize that of all the composers, he's the one that understood the modern piano the best. And there are reasons for that. First of all, an extraordinary talent, which came from God and nowhere else, because he didn't come from a particularly musical family or from a country which, well, he didn't come from a country. Poland didn't exist. So there wasn't a big tradition of Polish composers before him. So anyway, wherever he got it from, he had this understanding of the modern instrument. Because the pianos that were being built in the 1840s, 1830s were really very similar to they weren't forte pianos. They were just pianos like the ones we have nowadays, with the same kind of mechanism, but built with weaker materials. That's all. That's the only difference. And they were being built by people like Camille Pleyel, who was Chopin's greatest French friend. And so they kind of created these instruments hand in hand. I mean, Pleyel created it for Chopin, and Chopin would say, well, wait, I need this and this and this. So, this is also what makes Chopin's piano writing so fascinating. Then there's that side of it. But then there's also the side of it which, the name Janina Fialkowska, how could I not play Chopin? I would be taken out and shot if I didn't like Chopin. I mean, he's a national hero, going far beyond musician. He held the country together. His music held the country together. When it wasn't a country, and during the war, his music was played in the underground and things like that. So Chopin means a lot.
Being a renowned interpreter of Chopin and having won the Arthur Rubinstein competition, who he himself, a noted, well, probably one of the most notable interpreters of Chopin of the 20th century. Just right before we started chatting, I alluded to a question that I might ask. I was reading a little bit of Rubinstein and just kind of reading his quotes and, things that he'd said in the past and things that he says about playing, about his temperament and the fact that honesty is more important than accuracy. He'd rather drop some notes and have a honest sentimentality. But what is it about his idea that if a musician cannot resonate completely with a work, that they should not approach it?
Well, that's a wonderful topic to discuss, because I have a beautiful example.
Oh, fantastic.
The ballet Petrushka was transcribed for the piano by Stravinsky, the composer. But what people might not know is that he transcribed it with Arthur Rubinstein in Biarritz one summer. And Rubinstein then went on to play this piece often. And when I first knew Rubinstein, before we were really friends, it was still the mentor-protege thing, I thought I could impress him by learning this terribly difficult piece that I knew that he had transcribed himself with Stravinsky. So I worked terribly, terribly hard and got it so that it sounded reasonably decent, and I was playing the notes, and it's hard, and I was playing most of the notes. And so he came to town, and I went to his apartment in New York, and where he had a wonderful grand Steinway. And I sat down, and he was all excited. I said, "I've got Petrushka to play for you." I said, "Oh, really?" Oh, he got very excited, lit a cigar, sat back in the chair, and I started playing for him. And first thing I knew, he started fidgeting. And I thought, that's not normal. Normally when I play for him, everything is wonderful. He's very still, and the cigar goes out because he forgets to smoke it. But here he was relighting it even. And so anyway, in a big flurry, I end this piece. And I look at him, and he looks at me, shakes his head, and said, "No." And I'm crestfallen. I've spent 2 months learning this incredibly difficult piece for him. And he says, "Nina, this is not a piece for you at all." And then when he saw how, unhappy I was about this, he was such a nice man. He looked at me and he said, "No, this is peasant music. It's not for you." Oh. And I thought, how sweet. But, I learned a very, very valuable lesson then. Because I knew all along that this wasn't music for me. I just didn't get it. I'm sure that in later years, and perhaps now if I had the energy, I could probably play a really good Petrushka because I have a lot of experience and an imagination, and I would do it. But at that age, I didn't have the instinct for it, whereas I probably had the instinct for Chopin or for Mozart at that time. And so I learned my lesson, and I hear it over and over again now with the young people. They learn pieces to play for you which they think will impress you. And not necessarily what they feel themselves as being what they do the best. But, they just want to impress. And it's all wrong. And it just is not convincing. It's never convincing.
We are in the studio with internationally renowned pianist Janina Fialkowska here playing a recital of all Chopin tomorrow night at Eckhart Grammatte Hall at the University of Winnipeg as part of Virtuosi's 16-17 season. Now, speaking of these young pianists who may be so compelled to impress, you have been sitting on panels for competitions, and most notably very recently, the Van Cliburn, and many more to come this season. Tell us, what is it like to be on at this point in your career and being able to have the ears to hear these, whether they're instinctive language interpretations or kind of these forced interpretations? How do you deal with that as a panelist on these massive competitions?
I have to say this is a huge responsibility.
Yeah.
Huge. And on the juries that I've been on in my life, I would say that 99.9% of jurors feel that way. Now, naturally, we all have different tastes, and that's where it can get tricky. Usually the cream rises to the top, I have to say. But sometimes when there's someone with a huge personality, it might rub a certain juror up the wrong way, and they might not like it. And then maybe the candidate who is the least provocative, but who's very, very good, gets the first prize. And that bothers me slightly sometimes. At which actually I'll jump in here and quickly say I've actually created a festival in Germany where I now live for, as my husband very rudely calls, the losers. But they're not losers at all. They're the people that I think should have won or should have done better. And they come to my festival, and I give them a lot of encouragement. I let them play for German public, and oftentimes they get reviewed. And more often than not, that they go on and win prizes. I'll say that one huge example of a young person who came to my festival 2 years ago was Charles Richard Hamelin, who won the second prize at the Chopin, did better than any Canadian's ever done. Right. So I'm really very proud of him. I had another German boy, Alexander Schimpf, who won the Cleveland International. I had a French boy, François Dumont, came second in Norway. So, these are all kids that might have got lost. Not Charles. Yeah. But the others. The others could have got lost. And they needed just, like Rubinstein did for me, and I'm not in any way like Rubinstein, but they maybe needed an older and experienced musician to say, "You're good." And just now, I heard with, actually Jamie Parker was one of the other jurors.
Yeah.
We heard 144 40-minute recitals. Wow. And we had to winnow down to 30 candidates.
Your ears.
It was 5 weeks, 7 countries.
Oh, my goodness.
But may I say proudly, really proudly, that 3 of those 30 are Canadian.
Woo! Represent.
Yes, I tell you. And from all over the country.
Fantastic.
Yeah, Tristan Thiel from Vancouver, Mehdi Gaissi from Montreal, and, good Lord, Tony, of course, Tony Yang.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah,
Well,
brilliant. All
congratulations
three
to these 3 young pianists that
Yes.
moving on to the next round, the Van Cliburn.
Absolutely.
Probably, I mean, that competition is, I mean, what a wonderful story behind that with Van Cliburn. But we won't quite get into that yet.
Yes.
But what we will get into is a little bit of music. We're going to take a short break with another cut from your new Chopin Recital album.
Okay.
And we are going to have another bit in A-flat, nothing as substantial as the Polonaise Fantaisie, but still perfectly Chopin and so beautifully interpreted in your language. This waltz in A-flat major from the 42nd opus of Frederic Chopin from Janina Fialkowska. We'll be back in just a bit. And we are back in the Diamond Lane on Classic 107 in Winnipeg. Live in the studio, internationally renowned pianist Janina Fialkowska back here. It was only just a year ago that you were here playing with the Manitoba Chamber Orchestra, but now offering a recital all Chopin tomorrow night at Eckhart Grammaté Hall as part of Virtuosi's 16-17 season. For more info, virtuosi.mb.ca, our website, classic107.com, or give their box office a call, 204-786-9000. Thank you for staying with us, Janina.
You're very welcome.
We've been chatting during our little break, but I wanted to get into a little bit more of what's coming up for you before we talk about the recital tomorrow night. So we were talking about your abundance of jury appointments.
Yes, but that's got to stop because it takes too much time away from my practicing and my concerts.
Well, and there you go. So, and all of these concerts that are happening. So you were just touring all over Canada, and you were just recently in Vancouver with Eric,
with our beloved Eric Friesen,
who has been so long a friend of the station. And you've made your way back. 2 nights ago, last night you were playing in Saskatoon. Tomorrow night here in Winnipeg, and then you have a couple of weeks before you head to Austria again.
Yes.
So tell us what's up for the rest of the season.
Well, there's Austria. It's actually my debut in Austria. Yes. Can you imagine? I've never played there before. Well, you can do things at an elderly age and still have fun. But no, I will be in Austria at a very renowned festival near Graz, playing on April 22nd. And then I have my sort of every 2 years I play at Wigmore Hall. I'll be at Wigmore Hall. And then another competition to judge.
You say with such disdain.
But this one's okay. This is full circle. This is the Rubinstein competition.
Brilliant.
This is where I started my career. I hope this isn't where I'm ending it. But maybe this is where I've been invited to be in the jury several times, and I finally said yes.
Oh, wow.
So I do that. And then I have time off.
You have a little bit of time, and you're hanging out in Italy for a little while.
Yeah.
Now, tell us about this really fun thing you're doing on the 1st of July, on Canada Day, in fact, in Perugia.
Well, this is my buddy Angela Hewitt.
Who was just here in Winnipeg as well.
Absolutely. And she has a festival there in Umbria, and said, come on down, let's do something for Canada Day. Let's do a multi-piano thing like we used to do in the old days. So I said, sure, fine. And looked at the schedule and thought, well, this is great. Umbria, I'm not against that. Perugia. And so who else are we going to get? Well, Jackie Parker, of course, our old comrade in arms. Yeah. And we wanted to get someone new. So we got Charles-Richard Hamelin.
So who we were just speaking about a moment ago.
So the 4 of us will be playing sort of 2 piano, 3 piano, 4 piano things, and solo piano, and having a ball, I think. At least the 3 of us will. Poor Angela will be running the whole thing, so she'll probably be run off her feet. But the rest of us will probably just laugh our way through and have a great time.
I mean, and why not? If anyone's in Italy at the beginning of July, make sure to check this out. Oh, fantastic. And, well, so let's talk a little bit about, just because you just let us know that you're going to be on the panel for the Rubinstein competition, let's talk a little bit about how the Chopin recital tomorrow night is going to pan out. So the recital program for tomorrow night is not strictly from the disc. No. So tell us a little bit about how you chose the program for tomorrow night.
Very carefully.
Yes.
First of all, you don't want to have too much in the same key. That's very basic.
Fair.
Then you want to start with a Polonaise, because the Polonaise starts the ball.
Okay.
And the Polonaise Fantaisie was usually what I start with, which you just heard. But it didn't quite fit this program because I wanted to fit in quite a few pieces, and it's a big piece. So I put a shorter but rather more unknown Polonaise to start with in E flat minor. It's rather a spooky Polonaise, actually.
Ooh.
And so I think it might surprise a few people. And then I have, as the sort of meaty works on the program, I have the second ballade, which again is not that much played. I mean, I think the first and the fourth are played more often. But the second is that lovely, lovely piece based on a poem of Polish girls going swimming in the bad Tatars, rushing down, and the Polish girls praying to God, please save us. And anyway, the whole thing goes on and on and on. And he does save them by turning them into mysterious flowers. And so beware anyone who touches these flowers. And it's so perfect in the music. And Chopin, who really almost never composed to a theme like that, to a literary theme. This is just wonderful. I love playing this piece, and I love making everybody jump at the point where there's a very sudden, loud part when the Tatars are coming down the hill to do bad things. So it's a fun piece to play. And the other major work on it is the fourth scherzo, which is perhaps my favorite scherzo because it's, as I say, it's lighthearted Chopin. It's very unusual Chopin. And I end with the first scherzo, which is the archetypical Polish piece. It even has a Polish Christmas carol that in his homesickness he sort of inserted and made even more beautiful. And it's an incredibly dramatic piece. And interspersed between those major works, I have a lot of preludes, and I have a nocturne, and I have the most divine impromptu, which is very, very difficult, and I do hope it goes well tomorrow night, because it's one piece that I want everybody to love as much as I do. And, well, the whole program I do. I love this program, and I've now played it quite a bit over the last 2 weeks, and it seems to gel, and audiences seem to enjoy it. So I'm hopeful for tomorrow.
Well, I think our audiences are too. It's just always a joy to get to hear you in such an intimate venue, communicating in this language that is so not just familiar, but so malleable in your hands.
Thank you.
Janina Fialkowska, internationally renowned Canadian pianist, here in Winnipeg to present a recital of all Chopin in anticipation of the release of her new album of Chopin's late works for solo piano. Before we go, I have to mention, because we talked about this right at the beginning, but we didn't mention it. Your first album of all Chopin solo piano literature was released on RCA in 1977. And here we are, 40 years later, with your 8th album of solo repertoire of Frederic Chopin. How do you feel about that?
Old. And just to quickly say, I do other things too.
We have Liszt and Grieg. I mean,
Mozart
and
Paderewski, for heaven's sake,
another Polish great,
whose concerto I've been trying to play for years all over. And well, I managed to do it in Kingston and in Warsaw this year.
In Warsaw?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Well, he was Polish prime minister.
Yes, for that, 19 months. Or 8 months or 19.
It was a very short time, but it was when Poland became Poland again.
Right. It was. I feel like it was less than a year, but he was there.
It was a very short time.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm going to be playing the Paderewski with the BBC Orchestra for Poland's 100th birthday, which is in 1919.
In 2019. Yes.
Sorry.
Well, that'll be fantastic. What a wonderful occasion to get to play such a great piece.
It is a great piece.
Well, and I mean, not to mention, of course, you played the Chopin E minor earlier this year, earlier this season, and you'll be playing the F next season in the fall.
Yes.
So just so glad that the world has you to speak Chopin.
Thank you. You are too nice.
Oh, no. It's only because we are just such lucky audience members here in Winnipeg to get to invite you back after just a year.
Thank
you. Janina Fialkowska in concert tomorrow night at Eckhart Grammaty Hall at the University of Winnipeg as part of Virtuosi's 16-17 season. We're going to have another little taste of her new Chopin Recital album, the third of an intended 4 before that we will just anticipate the final installment of this great series. We're going to have a prelude, from Opus 28, which one? Number 15, in D flat major. So glad to have you back. Can't wait till tomorrow night. I'm sure our audiences will be blown away. For more info, virtuosi.mb.ca or call 786-9000.